Hello everyone, and welcome to this DCS News Q&A and video for September 6, 2015. In today's video, I'm going to be flying around in the L-39 Albatross on the Black Sea map using DCS 1.5. Now, in fact, this will be my first real experimentation in trying to land the L-39 based on feedback I got from our resident L-39 pilot on the development team. Now, based on his feedback, I have a pretty good idea of the speeds, altitudes, and spacing I should be using for the landing, but in practice, this is probably going to be pretty ugly, at least for the first few attempts. Now, based on the instructions I received, I should be at about 600 meters at 350 kph on the downwind leg, and then when the wing is about at the end of the runway, it should be about 330 kph and lower the landing gear. And then when the runway is about 45 degrees behind me, I should be at 300 or so kph. And at that point, then I'll pitch into the base leg. And then on the base leg, I should be at about 400 meters and about 280 kph. And at that point, I'll lower the flaps. And then I'll pitch into the finals. In finals, I'll be starting at around 300 or so meters, 260 kph. And by the time I'm at close final, I'll be about 230 kph. Now that's the plan. How it actually works in practice, at least for the first few attempts, will probably be pretty wildly different, but let's see. So now let's move on to Eagle Dynamics news. Now, as most of you I'm sure are very aware, we're planning on releasing DCS 1.5 later this month. And despite the snarky comments, we are very much in line of releasing it sometime between mid and late this month, as well as the L-39. Now, when we do release DCS 1.5, it will be released as an open beta. And for those of you that already have the open beta installed, it will essentially update your existing open beta version. For those of you who don't have the open beta, you can download that free from our website. I'll include a link to the open beta in the video notes. Now, prior to the release of 1.5, the team's been very busy trying to get 1.5 ready for the open beta release. And this is mostly focused around fixing remaining crashes, better performance optimization, improving the network code, and fixing graphical errors. But even when that's all done and we do the open beta release, as a beta, there will be a fair amount of remaining issues to resolve. And those will be addressed during the open beta period. Now, while a lot of the team has been focused on the release of DCS World 1.5, another part of the team has been, as you might imagine, very focused on getting the L-39 Albatross ready for open beta as well. Now, the primary focus of the L-39 team, as you might imagine, has been doing the remaining features of the L-39 and squashing bugs, as well as creating additional content for the product. Now, when the open beta ships, we'll have a set of instant action missions and single missions. And then as the product is fleshed out more and all the features are in, then we'll also be creating a training campaign. Now, for the L-39, we're also developing a brand new AI acrobatic scripting system. This will be particularly useful for training missions where the AI can show the player how to perform maneuvers. This will include a dialogue in the mission editor, which allows you to create maneuvering sequences with starting conditions and maneuvering parameters. It will also include some pre-made maneuvers such as simple turns, forced turns, military turn, loops, skewed loops, split S, implements, barrel rolls, aileron and fixed rolls, wing overs, hammerheads, knife edge, chandelles, spirals, dives, and climbs. Now, in addition to the potential this has for single missions such as acrobatics and training missions, this also can form the foundations for a much more advanced dogfighting AI system. Now, the last item I want to touch on for today's news is concerning DCS World War Two, and give you a little update on that. Now, the vast majority of the focus on this project right now has to do with the Spitfire. And while we have a object up and flying around in DCS World, vast majority of the work right now is simply code-based. So, as much as we like, there's really nothing to show at this point. hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll have the cockpit systems up and running, and we can show you more. But there's just really not a whole lot to show right now. Now, another element of DCS World War II, of course, is the Normandy Map, which is also making really good progress, which we actually have a really talented third-party team working on right now. And once it's a little bit further along, we hope we can give you some really good images and videos of that. So that is the news for Eagle Dynamics. And I'm going to move on to the Q&A section now. And unlike Q&As in the past, where I took 10 questions from the community, today I'm going to focus just on one single really big question that we've had for quite a long time and across many of our subforums and even forums from other websites. And this has to do with the age-old question of what's going on with air-to-air missiles. So the development producer and I, Cheech, had a long talk about this. And we essentially came up with 4 points that express our thoughts on this subject. So rather than me possibly misquoting anything that he and I agreed on, I'm actually just going to read these 4 points to you. First, Eagle Dynamics is certainly not ignoring shortcomings in air-to-air missiles and is very much continuing to address these issues. For example, we adjusted the active radar homing missiles logic such that missiles now have improved logic to allow them to fly to predicted intercept points in the event that the onboard seeker or supporting radar loses tracking. We've also recently adjusted the lift potential of several IR dogfighting missiles like the AIM-9M to allow more aggressive G-turning based on some recently acquired hard data. Second, when we make changes to air-to-air missiles, we only do so based on hard facts and not based on game balance, a community consensus, unsourced data, what other flight simulations do, or incomplete data. Third, while we certainly recognize there's room for improvement, a great deal of discontent also lies within the user community. This is a result of several factors, including many users simply not understanding the physics of missile flight and the effects of altitude, airspeed, launch platform speed, drag factors, target aspect, and motor performance. This leads to incorrect assumptions on missile shot ranges at lower altitudes, against low aspect targets, and so on. There is also a very clear bias of how users feel about air-to-air missiles should perform based on their location in the world. A good example of this is the perception of the AIM-120C performance on our English forums compared to our Russian forums. They are night and day. Both forums cannot be right, and this demonstrates how personal bias can greatly affect a user's point of view. While some older PC flight simulations were great for their time, their air-to-air missile modeling was quite primitive and highly inflated. This has led to some users incorrectly taking those faulty performance models as fact. And fourth, as mentioned though, we do realize that there's certainly room for improvement of air-to-air missiles in DCS World. Some of those critical areas are as follows. First, while we're very confident in the missile physics at 40,000 feet and above, they still need to be tuned for lower altitudes, particularly in the 30K area. While it's certainly possible to adjust some of the missile data to increase flyout ranges at 30K, this then results in outrageous performance at 40K and above. We need to tune this better. Second, currently we have a very basic proportional navigation, PN, that is very energy inefficient against maneuvering targets. We need to move to an augmented proportional navigation, APN, that will be much more efficient against the defensive target. Third, we need to adjust the lofting logic to be based on missile time to go time. Fourth, while we recently adjusted the chaff to be less effective, it can be further tuned against SAR systems based on look-down aspect. And fifth, the fusing logic can be improved by accounting for the entire aircraft and not just the cockpit. In summary, we believe that's a combination of items 3 and 4 that is leading to much of the discontent on this matter. However, per item 4, we recognize the work to be done and are actively working on it. However, before we can implement some of these changes, we first need hard fact data to base any adjustments on and not throwing some changes out that appease one particular consumer group. As we continue to work on this topic and make improvements, they will be noted in our updates. But to assume that Eagle Dynamics does not care about this and will not address shortcomings is false beyond measure. Anyhow, guys, this wraps up the statement on our topic. And as I just said, as we have new developments on this, they will be noted in future updates. And the video will continue running in probably another 10 minutes or so. So sit back and relax. and have a good laugh watching my landings. I'll talk to you next time.